This is Dads Watching Sports. It's the show by dads who watch sports, for dads who watch sports, or just dads in general. Here are the dads with a plan for every hashtag dad life and sports fan, Kyle Castles and Michael Draper.
Welcome in, everybody. It is Dad's Watching Sports. I am Michael Draper. He is Kyle Castles. Kyle, we've already got TJ jumping in and says, hello, boys.
TJ.
Congratulations, your Aggies. I know they're going bowling. Probably not where you thought they would go maybe halfway through the season, but we'll touch on some college football later on. There's a lot to get to, Kyle, after what was a busy championship Saturday.
Hey, speaking of championship Saturday, I'm almost positive I was 100% in my picks.
You did well, young man. You did very well in your picks. So congratulations. A tip of the hat to you. The Hulk Hogan flex, I like it. Very good. Yep. If only you would just rip your shirt. Please don't.
We need the people to stay listening and not tune us out. We got a guest. He'd probably head out.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, this is if this was just a podcast, that might be okay, but the video cast, the live stream, might not so much. But welcome to Dad's Watching Sports. If you are checking this out via our live stream, please go ahead and drop us a comment throughout the show. We do have a great guest coming up in a few minutes, and feel free to interact there. And then we'd love to hear from you. What do you think about the Final Four? What's going on in college football? What's going on in Major League Baseball? Really kind of across the sports land. If you're a dad out there, we'd love to hear from you as well, as we've got, as always, our dad topics that we're going to get to this week. But Kyle, you doing all right, man?
I'm doing okay.
Yep.
Doing okay. I feel okay. I've spent most of the day doing some work around the house. I know it seems crazy, but I actually had to cut some grass today. We just can't seem to get enough cold to hold the weeds back.
I know. We'll touch on that after. Bring that back up after our guest, because I am the guy in my neighborhood who is like, it's like borderline. Should I cut my yard? Like I'm going to brag a little bit. My grass is really green, looks really good, but it's kind of to that point of, should I cut it one more time? But we'll get to that a little bit later on, because what I do want to get to is our guest. We got a great guest coming on with us this evening. He is Bryan Hoch, and he is going to join us now. Covers the New York Yankees for Major League Baseball and does a lot of different other stuff surrounding Major League Baseball. But Bryan, welcome to Dad's Watching Sports. How are you, sir?
Thank you. I think you should give it one more trim on the grass before winter comes. So
says the guy in New York. Says the guy in New York that's had snow on the ground for a month already.
Well, while you can get to it, why don't you do that? Yeah.
Yep. No, and I probably will. I mean, it's definitely pushing that point where my neighbors might end up saying something, or I might get a letter in the mail from the HOA. But Bryan, thanks again so much for joining us here on Dad's Watching Sports. We appreciate you coming on. And before we get into some of the questions that we have for you, I've got to brag on you a little bit here and talk through kind of your brag sheet. Now, Kyle.
Oh, man.
One day I hope that somebody writes our bio like this, Kyle. Like it's this detailed and this much great stuff going on. So Bryan has been covering the Yankees for the better part of 2 decades and works for the MLB.com as a beat reporter for the New York Yankees. Can be regularly seen on the MLB network and heard on many radio stations throughout the U.S. Has also been featured in the Yankees magazine, New York Mets Inside Pitch, and FoxSports.com. Kyle, our guest tonight has either authored or co-authored 3 different books. The Baby Bombers, the inside story of the next Yankees dynasty. He's the co-author of Mission 27, A New Boss, A New Ballpark, and One Last Ring for the Yankees Core 4. And the author of The Bronx Zoom, Inside the New York Yankees' Most Bizarre Season. And on top of all that, Kyle, 2-time, not one, but 2-time New York City Marathon finisher. And he's a family man, fits in the family within all this. He's got 2 daughters, Penny and Maddie, along with his wife, Connie. So That is the brag sheet.
It's quite a list. You're making me feel bad about it.
Hey, I'm never going to brag
trim them down a little bit.
I'll I'll never have a brag sheet like that because I'm not that good. Hats
Oh,
off
man.
to you for everything you're doing, man.
I believe you are that good. You just got to fatten up that resume a little bit, and maybe I padded it somewhere along the line.
Hey, that's all right. That's what you've got to do. So Bryan, I know you grew up in New York. I read in your bio that in high school you actually launched a Mets online website that kind of covered the New York Mets. So growing up in New York, now you cover the Yankees, but did you grow up a Mets fan?
Bizarre story. It's weird. So I started out a Yankee fan. Like Don Mattingly was my guy. I had a Mattingly poster on my wall, as did most kids of that era in the growing up in the 80s. Like Donnie Baseball was the man.
Yeah.
I was 12 years old in 1994 when baseball went on strike, and it just broke my heart. And it's funny that we're discussing this given what's going on right now in baseball, but that just broke me. And I didn't watch baseball for another couple of years after that. And 96, my dad was a Mets fan. My grandfather was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan who became a Mets fan. And they were kind of like pulling me saying, hey, why don't you come watch the Mets with us? I know. Yeah. All right. So I got these young kids coming up, Jason Isringhausen, Bill Pulsifer, Paul Wilson. Mets are going to be really good. And I took that bait and I said, all right. And I went all in on the Mets in 1996, which was as a high school student in New York. I grew up in upstate New York, Rockland County, New York, which is about an hour north of the city. And so the Yankees are going to win the World Series in 96, 98, 99, 2000. Those are my high school years. So you can imagine the grief I took from everybody else in my classes because I'm like the number one Met fan in my school. And the Yankees are just winning the World Series every year.
Yeah. So what was it like? Was it 2000 was the Subway Series, right? So what was that like being a Mets fan and going through that experience?
It was, the ending wasn't what you wanted as a Met fan, of course. But for me personally, it was an incredible experience because, and I'm probably skipping ahead to a few questions here, but I started that website in 96. And by 2000, it had a pretty decent following. I think that I was just fortunate to come along when the internet's back in like the wild, wild west, AOL dial up, dark days of the internet where nobody really knew what to do with this thing. And so I created what we probably today would call a blog, but we didn't know what blogs were back then. And so it gained some popularity. And around the summer of 2000, somebody with the Mets, Tom Keenan, contacted me and said, hey, if you want to come to Shea Stadium, we can give you an unpaid internship and you can just work for us for the summer. And I said, okay, wait, I get to go to every Met game for free and like have a pass around my neck that says club official and walk around the office. Okay, where do I sign up? Right. So long story short, I got to be there for the whole playoff run. They clinched the postseason. I'm actually in the outfield. There's a picture of me somewhere chasing like John Franco with an old digital camera because I was sent to take pictures for the website, which was just incredible to be there on the field as 55,000 people are going nuts. And so I was there for Game 5 when Piazza hits that fly ball to center field, and off the bat you think, whoa, did something just happen? And of course it died right in Bernie Williams' glove. And the Yankees celebrate the World Series on the field at Shea. And I had tears in my eyes walking out of Shea that night because not just because the Mets lost the World Series, but because I didn't know if that was the end of my story in baseball. There was no guarantee that I was going to get to hang around. That might have just been the end of a great experience. And of course, once I had that foot in the door, I never wanted to let it close.
Absolutely.
So who introduced you? You've mentioned your dad and your granddad. Who introduced you to sports, especially baseball, and what kind of influence did they have over you?
Baseball has always been my number one sport, going back to like when I was 8 years old. And I have to give the credit to my dad. He definitely introduced me to baseball. I remember when we got the old Nintendo. You guys remember the original NES? Like one of the first things he got me was the baseball. Remember, it was just the little block guys who would walk around, and I didn't even understand the rules of the game. I remember mashing the controller to try and get the guy to go back to home plate because he was going to be out at first. So that was really my introduction. It's kind of like learning how the game works. I learned from Nintendo, and then with my dad, and then playing Little League. And, in my neighborhood, I was, a huge baseball fan, but there were a bunch of kids in the area who were also Yankee fans. So we kind of watched those terrible Yankee teams of the early 90s together with the Mel Halls and the Jesse Barfields and, Andy Hawkins pitching the no-hitter and losing. So, that was kind of my introduction to to pro sports. And, I watched the other sports too, but baseball was always just a notch above everything else in my book.
Yep.
We talk about that a lot on this show about, not only how did we fall in love with the teams that we like. We had a whole episode back earlier this year dedicated to like just fanhood and how people become fans and why are they fans of teams. And then so how did we become a fan? And then how are we passing that along to our kids, and what kind of expectations do we have set for, hey, I'm a diehard University of Kentucky fan. So I've got my kids dressed in blue and learning the Kentucky fight song and all these things. And it's so interesting to see how, as a parent, that kind of comes into play, and how your fandom or fanhood is just kind of usually goes along with, your core family and how that kind of pulls you in. So it's
absolutely really... Yeah. I mean, in my situation here, I've got 2 girls who are 5 and 3 years old, and we're not really forcing it on them, but it's just kind of the environment that they're growing up in. I mean, I work in sports. My wife worked in the Yankees PR department. So that's actually where we met. We met at Yankee Stadium, and that's part of our story. And so I think that just growing up in this house, I mean, you can't walk 2 steps without tripping over something that's baseball or Yankees. And so I think they just understand it's part of what daddy does. But yeah. I think they're also beginning to get a better grasp on what's going on in the games, especially my 5-year-old Penny. She, I think, is really grasping it, and that's starting the last year or so. And it's been cool to kind of explain things to her. Why is this guy doing this? Why is he standing there? Why are they, why is the team doing that? And I'm not sure she's getting all of it, but she's getting enough of it that, I mean, she's leaps and bounds ahead of where I was. Cause like I said, I didn't probably even start watching baseball until 7 or 8. So she's a couple of years ahead of me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of hinted at this a little bit, talking about, starting your website in high school and then going on and kind of interning with the Mets or whatever. But I mean, what has that been like to essentially develop a career, focusing and covering, the hometown team, who is also, a lot of people would say, the greatest sports franchise maybe ever.
I mean, I am so incredibly fortunate. Like, I definitely caught 1,000 lucky breaks along the way. I'm not going to say it was all easy, because I hit a lot of dead ends as well. And, I started out on the Mets, of course, as there, and I was freelancing for a long time, covering both teams in New York, bouncing back and forth, picking up whatever scraps of assignments I could get. And I just knew that growing up in New York, there's no place like New York for baseball. It's where I wanted to be. I was willing to go somewhere else if that's what it took, but the goal was always to come back to New York. And so I was up for a job in Baltimore, for example, and I think I was the runner-up for that in 2006. And it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it put me in position when the Yankees beat came open. Mark Feinsand, who covered the Yankees for MLB.com, and we'd later co-author a book together, Mission 27, he was leaving for the New York Daily News. And so I happened to be filling in on the Met beat that week. It was during the winter meetings where baseball kind of gets all together and everybody's in the same hotel. And that was kind of the scuttlebutt through the lobby, is that, hey, the Yankees beat is coming open. And I just made sure that I pinned down anybody who had any say in short of the janitor, anybody who could kind of vouch for me. I said, hey, I know you think of me more as a Mets guy, but I would love to go across town and have the opportunity to cover the Yankees if you consider me. And, they called me a few days before Christmas in 2006, or after Christmas, I think, a few days before New Year's. And, they offered me the job, and I didn't even ask what it paid. It didn't matter. I was taking it. I mean, so that was kind of the start of everything. And I definitely had some moments where I doubted if it was going to work. And, I was making, under $30,000 a year and thinking, like, how am I going to survive on this? And, I went to bartending school just thinking, hey, maybe that's something I have to do to make this fly. And the Yankee thing came, and I haven't looked back. And hopefully it's the only job I ever have to have, because I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to be able to work in something that you love like that, I think Kyle and I both, we're in professions that we absolutely love and kind of guided ourselves into as well. And to be able to do that, it makes it almost like you never really have to work, so to speak. So one other question I had for you is, and you mentioned Mission 27, the book that you co-authored, kind of about the Yankees core four, if you will. Talking about those 4 guys and covering their careers, and then it culminating with that 2009 World Series. Like, I mean, those are four of the greatest Yankees, if not the greatest baseball players of all time, especially when you're thinking Jeter and Rivera.
Sure.
What has it been like to be around such just phenomenal talent?
I kind of have two different thoughts on that, because one, I always tried to kind of take a step back and realize, hey, what you're watching here is very special. Just because you get to see it every single day, like try and drink it in a little bit, because we're not going to see Derek Jeter again. We're not going to see Mariano Rivera again. And I always kind of had that in the back of my mind that, this generation is Joe DiMaggio. I'm walking here and like I'm talking to him in his locker after every game. And so we all knew Derek was going to Cooperstown, and we all knew the same thing for Mo. And so these are first ballot, should have been unanimous Hall of Famers. Mariano was, Derek missed by one vote. But the flip side of that is that they were very normal people. I mean, they were fantastic at what they did. And, I could tell what made them so driven and focused, and what put them a notch above even their peers was that kind of single-minded dedication to being great. And the fact that they were never satisfied with, they wanted to win the World Series every year. And if they didn't do it, they considered it a failure. And so to kind of experience that and see how they prepared every day from the first day of pitchers and catchers in February all the way through whenever the season ended in October or November in the case of 2009. You can't put a price tag on the little things of that, and just seeing the way they interact with their teammates, the respect they had around the room. And but we all knew that they were the all-time greats of the game. What we didn't know, and in the case of Mission 27 there, look, they had moved from the old Yankee Stadium to the new Yankee Stadium. They won the World Series in part because they went out and they got CeCe Sabathia and AJ Burnett and Mark Teixeira. They spent a ton of money, and we just kind of figured at the time, okay, well, that's what they were supposed to do, and they'll win again in 2010 or 11 or 12 or 13, and then it didn't happen. And then looking back 10 years later, and which is what we did for that book, which was catching up with everybody 10 years after the fact, I thought that was really, really fun. It was like going to your high school reunion in a lot of ways, and catching up with guys you hadn't seen or talked to for a while, and just saying, hey, what was happening really back then? Because you wouldn't tell us then. Can you tell us now? And that's how we got a ton of stories for that book about, the wild nights they were having off the field and the parties. And, the A-Rod had a pool party where everybody was in tuxedos and they all wound up in the pool. And so just crazy stuff happening during that whole year that when you're in real time, you don't know that it's happening because nobody really wants to tell you. And they're kind of locked in on what they need to do. But looking back, it was the last time we were ever going to see Derek or Mariano hold the World Series trophy. And, in the case of a guy like A-Rod, it was the only time he was ever going to get to do it. And we didn't fully appreciate it, I think, in the moment because you didn't know what the future was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kyle and I were talking before the show, and I mentioned to him that you'd recently tweeted about Roger Maris not making the Hall of Fame, and you talked about the Hall of Fame just a minute ago. And we were consider us both. Kyle likes baseball a lot and follows it much closer than I do. But we were both shocked to know that Maris is not in the Hall of Fame.
Isn't that wild? Yeah. I mean, you're not alone. I mean, a lot of people on my Twitter timeline were saying that today. Like, I can't believe that he's not already in. And you would have figured that, a guy who played his last game, some 50 years ago and had such a presence and a mark on baseball. I mean, you can't tell the story of baseball without telling the story of Roger Maris in 1961 and the home run chase. And I mean, the Billy Crystal made a fantastic movie about it, which, by the way, holds up. I watched it about a year ago. It's still very good. And what they were able to do with green screen and the kind of the technology they had at the time, it's still a great piece of storytelling. So, yeah, I mean, you look at the numbers and, Maris had a handful of great seasons and then a lot of very good ones. And does that put him over? I guess not. But, as far as I'm concerned, if he had a plaque in Cooperstown tomorrow, would I get upset about it or say, oh, that's not right? No way in heck. So I think that's kind of the benchmark there. Would you walk by that plaque and say, hey, what's he doing here? And Roger Maris, for me, is not one of those guys.
No, and I think that's the same for most people. So we've talked about people that are already in Cooperstown and one that should be in Cooperstown. And forgive me, this wasn't on the rundown, but I just have that thought. I had that thought when you were talking about walking with Jeter and DiMaggio, and you're doing the same thing right now, covering the Mets and watching Jacob deGrom. And I don't know how much you can say about a current player, but I mean, I'm looking at this guy going, he's already a 2-time Cy Young winner. He's probably Cooperstown bound as well. Is there anything you can say about Jacob deGrom other than he's just really freaking good?
Other than he's really freaking good. I mean, he is. And so I don't cover Jacob because I'm on the Yankee beat. So, but I get to watch him when he goes up against the Yankees. And I mean, just the respect he gets from his peers. At the baseball writers dinner, we've had him there when he comes to pick up the Cy Young Award. So got to interact with him a little bit there. To me, it's kind of what do teammates and opponents say about these players. And I feel like deGrom across the board is just he's got the respect of everybody. And I think you're looking at a guy who's on his way to Cooperstown right there.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a stretch at all to say.
No, not at all. And I agree with you. So this is Dad's Watching Sports. We're going to flip the script and let's talk about being a dad. So let's just kind of introduce your family and tell us a little bit about them.
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned, my wife, Connie, we got married in 2015. She worked in the Yankees PR department. So we're kind of a baseball family. That's deeply ingrained into who we are. And so, our daughter, Penny, she's 5, and our other daughter, Maddie, is 3. And Penny kind of has become a little bit of an internet star here in the last year or so because she's got this little web series she does called Penny 2 Cents, where she'll give her take and on the recent Yankee news and what's going on with the team. And it was something we kind of started as a goof in 2020. Obviously it was such a dark time and baseball was in question for a long time. We didn't know if there was going to be a season, and then there was going to be a season, albeit a abbreviated one. And Penny was very excited and interested in what Daddy was doing because I was one of the few people who was able to actually go to the stadium and watch a live baseball game in 2020. They would allow 35 media members in and obviously no fans. So I did my little video stand-ups pre and post game, and Penny decided one day that she wanted to do her own. And so Connie shot that with the camera and they sent it to me. And I said, well, this is cute. Do you mind if I put it on Twitter? And so it was supposed to be a one-off deal, but I don't know, just to see a 4-year-old genuinely excited about baseball coming back and kind of talking about how pumped she was to watch the game that night. I feel like in a time where people were depressed, we didn't know if there was a light at the end of the tunnel of this thing. And I thought it was kind of this positive ray of sunshine that I guess people connected with because they wanted more and more of it. And even now I get DMs and tweets saying, when's Penny going to do her next video? Somebody put her on a t-shirt, which just blows my mind. I was walking around Yankee Stadium and I saw probably a 20-year-old girl wearing my daughter on a t-shirt. And I just said, all right, I got to take a picture of this because this is crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah. She's becoming a little star there. That's fantastic. Well, we are all, full-time working dads and one thing that I think we all, I don't know if necessarily struggle with, but I'm sure it definitely comes in the back of our minds from time to time is just kind of that work-life balance. We want to pour ourselves into our field and our craft and be the best that we can. And like you've talked about, going from being an intern with the Mets to working as the beat writer for the Yankees, a lot of time, energy, and effort goes into that, but we also want to be that for our families as well. So just talk a little bit about that work-life balance and how you're able to be there. There's 162 baseball games every year, but there's 365 days of being a dad.
Right. Yeah, you're right. There is no off season to being a dad. And you talk about that. There's no off season to baseball, except for maybe this year. Maybe we are getting one. But I think that it's definitely a grind. And, you talk about a baseball season. Like I said, it begins at Valentine's Day and it could go until November if your team is going to win the World Series. So it's a lot of nights on the road, a lot of travel, a lot of, restaurant food and airports and hotels. And that is not generally conducive to being home and tucking the girls in at night and reading them a story. So I really try to do it whenever I can. I mean, there's going to be times that it's unavoidable and I have to fly to the West Coast for a 7-game series or, 7-game road trip or whatever it may be. But we've really made an effort ever since Penny was born to bring the girls on the road whenever possible. And so we've driven to a lot of these cities that the Yankees play in because my employer doesn't care how I get there. They just care that I get there. And so if that means I drive my car to Baltimore or to Boston, so it means I get an extra weekend with the family, where they can stay in the hotel and order room service and go explore a cool American League city while I'm at the ballpark, then I feel like that's a win-win for everybody. And so I've definitely done a lot of driving. I've taken them to Chicago, to Toronto. We haven't dared to go to the West Coast yet. We did fly them to the West Coast once or twice, but we're just trying to take advantage, especially at this time where we're not tethered to a school schedule. I think that's going to complicate it a little bit more. But now they're kind of in their pre-K years. What better education is there than kind of getting to explore and see new things and these new cultures, and to be able to say, oh, I've been there. Yeah, my daddy took me there, and hopefully that stuff they'll remember down the road.
Yeah, and I think you hit that right on the head, just about those experiences, and we talk about that a lot on this show. Is just the things that we can do for our children, the things that we can get them, but those experiences, and I know my kids are 5 and 3 as well, so I'm right there in the same with you. But I know the likelihood that they're going to remember a lot of this stuff when they're 20 years old is somewhat slim, but I think that those experiences also help kind of shape who they are and who we are as a family. And so I think it's awesome that you guys do those road trips and bring them along.
Thank you. You know what the difference is now compared to when you and I were kids, though? I mean, we've got camcorders in our pocket all day. Right. So there's no excuse for us not to be taking photos and videos. I mean, my kids, I'd be shocked if there's more than a handful of days of their life that aren't documented in some way. Like, has a day gone by where we didn't take one picture of the girls? And, let alone, we've got time hop and stuff. So we mess around with that, me and my wife, and you never know what's going to pop up. And today there was just baby talk of 1-year-old Penny, which is 4 years ago. And she's babbling about whatever. And it's like, I'm so glad we have not just this video, but we can have the audio, because she's never going to do that again. And so, I feel like compared to when you and I were kids, I assume in the 80s, I mean, we had the photo album with the sticky pages, but that was pretty much it. And, mom and dad would say, don't waste all the shots in the 35 millimeter camera, because we're only going to get one roll developed. And now just take as many as you want. There's no excuse.
No, absolutely.
All right, so you've already answered my next question. Do your daughters enjoy sports and baseball? It sounds like they do. But knowing what I know now, I have to ask, do they have a favorite? Because I'm assuming they go into the ballparks at least once on those trips. Do they have a favorite outside of Yankee Stadium? Or do they love Fenway? Or do they love?
I haven't. They've been to a few of them. I feel like at this point, they're not getting a whole lot. Like, we took them to Toronto, for example, and they went into the Rogers Center, and they lasted about 2 innings. So it's kind of like, it's nice. We got the photo op, and they got a little certificate from the Blue Jays that said my first game at Rogers Center. But I feel like we're still a couple years away from when I'm gonna teach them how to keep score of a game, and they're gonna know the names of every single player on the field. So we're working on it. We'll get there, but we've gotten a lot of cool photo ops in places like, Fenway, like you mentioned there, or Baltimore. And just to be able to say they were in those cities. What they're actually enjoying a lot more than that is getting to try all the different kinds of food.
I totally get that.
When I'm away, when I'm at work, I got to get to the ballpark probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock. So that leaves them with their entire night free to explore. And Connie's great with pushing a stroller around or whatever they do with the kids, and wherever she wants to go, to a playground or whatever. And so how many kids can say they've had legit New England clam chowder and liked it? And so I just think that it's all part of the experiences, is exposing them to as much as we can.
No, I get that. So I got a 5-year-old who has a severe tree nut allergy, and there's a treatment place out in California that can almost get rid of it, basically. And so we're going out there regularly, and my wife's a big Dodger fan. So we took him to a Dodger game for the first time this past summer, and he got that same little certificate saying #1 fan or something like that. I don't know. He thought he was hot stuff, and wanted to get a picture. I don't know. You've been to Dodger Stadium. Maybe you've seen their rings out there in the outfield bleachers. We had to stop at every single ring and take a picture. And I'm just sitting there as a Cubs fan. My oldest is named Wrigley. Right. I'm a Cubs fan. I'm going this would be a whole lot quicker if we were at Wrigley Field than
You're right. That's really funny.
Yes, it would be just a little bit quicker though, Kyle. Not too much. You talked about kind of traditions and traveling and taking the kids with you. We are in the holiday season, so any fun family holiday traditions that you guys have this time of year?
I mean, we've been watching a ton of Christmas movies, and I mean, Elf is on constant rotation in this house, and the kids are actually quoting lines of it back and forth, which is kind of funny. They're seeing them reenact scenes from the movie, so that's kind of fun. My dad's family is Jewish, so actually tonight we had our first ever Hanukkah dinner together. We just kind of wanted to expose them to, I mean, here's the menorah, here's what the dreidel is. And I was trying to explain it to them. And they were like, Dad, we already know this. And I said, how? And they said, well, from Blue's Clues Hanukkah. And I said, oh, okay. Good. Well, good. Maybe they got the story better than I did. But
that's great.
So that's kind of the thing. We're a household that celebrates Christmas, but I see no reason why we can't dabble in that too, because it's part of who they are. So
yeah, that's awesome, and that's hilarious. The things that our children learn from, was it Blippi and Blue's Clues and all the little shows.
Don't get me started on that guy.
I know, right? Yeah.
See, apparently y'all haven't been brought up on Bluey yet. Bluey.
I got a lot of Bluey. Yeah. Here's my question about Bluey. Why do they keep beating on the dad all the time?
I don't know, but then it turns on me in real life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Same.
Yeah. That's that was
a real problem with Bluey.
Yeah, those writers, they know exactly how things happen in real life. They're like, yeah, the dad.
That one and Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig's dad is this big fat guy, and they jump on his tummy all the time.
Yeah,
just like, yeah, we got to do that again. Okay.
Yeah. Peppa Pig is one that we went through probably a 6-month stretch where that's all our kids wanted.
I got to be honest. This is probably the first interview I've done where I brought up Bluey, Peppa Pig, Blue's Clues. I don't usually get to talk about this when I go on baseball shows.
Welcome to Dad's Watching Sports.
That's right.
We
don't get into a lot of X's and O's. We talk about what our kids are watching and all the other stuff. So
love it.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
We will get back to baseball real quick. 2021, the postseason was really incredible. I thought it was a great baseball postseason. Do you have any thoughts there you want to share?
My postseason ended earlier than I thought it was going to. I'll tell you that. No, I mean, obviously, I watched the rest of it on TV all the way through the very end, and I don't know how many people picked the Braves as World Series champions going into the year, which kind of just tells you everything you need to know about baseball. I mean, you can't predict baseball. John Sterling says it all the time, and it's true. If you could, you would just pick the Yankees and Dodgers to win the World Series every single year, like Vegas does, really. But as it was for me, 2021, I think it goes down as a year where it was putting 2020 further in the rearview mirror, because that was such a, and I wrote a whole book about it, but that was such a strange year, and I understood why we needed it and why we had to play that shortened season. But I'll tell you, like walking into Yankee Stadium, and you'd walk in at 6:30, 7 o'clock, the lights are on, but everything is just bolted up. The gift shops are gathering dust. There's nobody in the stands. And then you hear this fake audio track come over the stadium, and the Yankees run out in their pinstripe uniforms. It's like, who are they playing this for? Who is this for? And you had to remember there was a whole audience at home that was going to watch this, and I think needed some kind of diversion at that time. But having the fans back, I think, is in 2021. That's what it's going to be for me. Is that it's something I don't think we can ever take for granted again, because you saw how just lack of energy there was. I mean, something was really missing by not having a live audience, and I didn't think it was going to bother the experience as much as it did, because we've all watched games where there's not a big crowd on hand, right? And where there's 5, 6, 7,000 people, and you think, wow, there's nobody here. But when there's really nobody there, it's just like, ugh, this is not the way this game needs to be played. And so to have kind of the world progressing to a point where you can have packed houses again. And I mean, the World Series was just electric, and seeing those crowds go nuts. That's kind of my takeaway, even more than watching which team was going to win it. It was kind of like we all won it because we were so much closer back to normal than we were even at the beginning of 2021. And just kind of gave me a lot of optimism and hope for where we're going.
Yeah, and the Astros didn't win.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, so that you went through 2020, you went through 2021. Well, now we're heading into 2022, and we are in the middle of a lockout right now. And I know there's not a whole lot you can really get into, but just kind of state of the union, or just kind of your pulse of where things are from what you can at least say.
Yeah, I can't say much about it, but I would say that everything I've been told, and I'm like way disconnected here, but has been to be ready for a on-time start to spring training and the regular season. So hopefully that happens. I'll tell you, I've got a hotel reservation booked for March 31. The Yankees will be opening up in Arlington, and I'm planning on being there. So hopefully they can figure it out on both sides. But I guess we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, he's Bryan Hoch, covers the Yankees for MLB.com as a beat reporter, and again, author of The Baby Bombers, Mission 27, and The Bronx Zoom Inside the New York Yankees' Most Bizarre Season. Bryan, this has been awesome, man. We thank you so much for your time. It's good to hear about you and your family and everything that you guys have going on, and best of luck going forward.
Thanks, guys. I enjoyed the chat. Keep the kids away from Peppa Pig, would you?
We'll do our best. Thanks a lot,
All
Bryan.
Right. Sounds good. Bud. See you guys.
All right, Kyle. Well, that was like he said. You just never know when you're doing these interviews what you're going to talk about. And of course, it's our show that brings up Peppa Pig and Bluey and all the good stuff that's involved with dad life.
Yeah, that's what we do. This is where we live. Like legitimately, we live in Bluey and Peppa Pig and Blippi and all of that. Why not talk about it?
Of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, one other place that we sometimes live, Kyle, is in a stressful situation having kids. I don't know about you, but you ever have stressful situations with the kids?
I mean, just a few.
Just every once in a while. So, and most of the time, I would think that those are not necessarily overly self-inflicted, as in like it's not something that we bring on ourselves. It's more of just kid didn't get a good nap, or it's just been a long day, or or they just woke up and decided today's the day to be in a bad mood. But we were coming back from the lake this afternoon, and the kids have been a little testy all weekend, and we didn't get a whole lot of sleep. And I told my wife on the way home, I told Suzanne, I said, I feel a little bad. I feel like I've been a little short-tempered with the kids, did a little bit more yelling than I probably should have this weekend, trying to get them in line. So let's do something fun tonight. Why don't we go and buy the stuff to make gingerbread cookies, and we'll do that together. We'll let them decorate them. We'll take them to their kids, their teachers tomorrow. This will be a great experience. You ever cooked cookies or baked cookies from scratch with your kids, Kyle?
I have watched my wife do it, and Lauren usually does most of it, and the kids stand there and watch and lick the spoon when she's done stirring.
Mm-hmm. So I had never really done this either. And one, I will say I have a probably what should have been a long time ago, but a newfound appreciation for my wife for something else that she does. So she let me kind of own this. So I went to the store, bought all the ingredients.
Because she's smart.
Yeah, she is. And we got into it, and things were okay at first. Like when we were mixing all the stuff together, I'd let Hayden do a little bit, and then I'd let Emma do a little bit, and I would kind of control it. Well, then we got to the point where we had the batter, I guess you would call it, the cookie dough, and we were ready to roll it out and start, taking our little cutters and making them out. And then I got in that 2-on-1 area really quickly, where like Emma, who's 5, is kind of in control of what's going on over here, but then Hayden's just making a mess, and it was so stressful. It was so stressful. And I mean, they had fun and we got to decorate and it was fine, but like the whole time I'm just like, no, stop that. Wait. Yep. And so here I was like, wanted to do something fun, and I think they enjoyed it, but I think I was completely stressed.
At the end of the day, if they enjoyed it, it's completely worth it.
Yeah.
I remember going to Disney World with Jack and Wrigley before Hannah.
Yeah. And
you want to talk about stress. There's not much more stressful than a Disney World trip with, let's see, I think it was like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 1.5, somewhere in there. I mean, I know Jack was 1.5, so Wrigley had to be 3. I mean, just super, super super stressful. But you know what? It was a great trip because they didn't have a clue how stressful it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were just happy to be there.
If you can keep it all behind the scenes.
Yep.
Sorry to not completely being engaged in your conversation, but we'll peel back the curtain a little bit. So my wife just texted me. Suzanne just texted me and said, "Did you just hear that bang?" Which I did. She said, "Emma just fell out of her bed." Apparently she got back into bed and she's back asleep. So she bounced back like a champ,
Hey,
but fell out of her bed, which is so ironic because you were talking about Disney. The only time we've been to Disney was when Emma was like 2.5. And the only thing she remembers was on the first day before we went to the park, the very first day, she was sitting on the bed. She fell out of the bed and had basically a black eye for a day and a half. And that's the only thing that she really remembers. She fell out of her bed as you're telling that story, which is just, that's just bizarre. So, well, I'll tell you what's not bizarre. And that was the outcomes from Saturday's games. If you're a fan of Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, and the like, a fun championship Saturday.
It was
for college football.
It was. I mean, we started out fun with an upset with Baylor. Then we had another. I guess you call it an upset with Bama beating Georgia.
Yep.
Cincinnati took care of business, and that got us, hopefully I'm not moving too fast, but that got us our first, non-Power 5 team in the Final Four.
Yeah.
As the 4 seed against the 1 seed Bama, which I'm just going to say it. It was on ESPN radio this morning, and Mel Kiper was talking about how he thinks Cincinnati's going to beat Alabama.
Oh, Mel. The
one thing Cincinnati doesn't want is anyone, Mel Kiper included, giving Bama, bulletin board material.
Yeah. You heard. I don't know if you heard the quote by Saban after the championship game yesterday against Georgia. He said that rat poison that you guys gave us was yummy. Basically saying we came out with a chip on our shoulder. And we did that because everybody and their mom was picking Georgia to win this game and think that we didn't have a shot and that, our run was done and all this. And
not everybody picked Georgia.
I will give you that credit. One thing that I thought was really impressive about Alabama in that game was, people may forget they were down 10-0.
Yeah.
Like Georgia was up 10-0. It just scored a touchdown and it looked like Georgia was about to run away with this thing, and Bama just very calmly marched right back down the field, scored a touchdown, and then, really just kind of took over.
Yeah.
But they withstood the early onset rally by Georgia, and then just came out and just took it right to them.
They did what you would expect a Nick Saban coached team to do,
sure.
And that is come out and say, "Oh, you thought that this was yours. You thought that you were better. But we're here to show you something else." And they did.
So Alabama's number 1. The playoff rankings came out at 11 o'clock or Central Time this morning. Alabama 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincinnati 4. So we at least don't get a rematch of Bama and Georgia in the semifinals. It's kind of what I thought. I was like, there's no way they're going to match them up for a semifinal rematch right off the bat. 2 really interesting games there, Alabama and Cincinnati. You mentioned already Mel Kiper thinks the Bearcats might pull off the upset there.
Yeah.
And then Michigan and Georgia, which if any team scores more than 10, 17 points based off those 2 defenses, that might be a winner there. But any initial thoughts there on those 2 matchups?
Yeah, I don't think Georgia could have pulled a better first-round matchup there. What Georgia does well is stop the run, and what Michigan wants to do is run the football. So I think you're going to have to tell Michigan Cade McNamara is going to have to win the ball game for you with his arm, and I don't think that is possible. Michigan hadn't all year had their best wide receiver. I forget his name, but he got hurt early this year. I don't see enough weapons. I don't see enough firepower on the outside for them to do what Alabama did. Alabama's probably got the 2 best receivers in the nation in Mechie and Williams. Michigan does not have that. I think Georgia can just man up and put 8-9 in the box and go to work and dare them to throw.
Looking at this matchup from a coach's standpoint, you kind of have the two guys at least recently that have been kind of plugged as they can't win the big one with Kirby Smart and Jim Harbaugh. So one of them is going to win this game in that coaching matchup. Who do you like? Do you like Harbaugh? They've been hot, and he finally got the Ohio State hump.
They have been. They've been hot. The problem is we got a few weeks now that they're gonna have time to cool off.
Yeah.
And I don't see them being able to run the football consistently against that Georgia defense. I mean, Alabama couldn't. There's not a team that we have seen this year that can consistently run the ball against that Georgia defense, and that's what Michigan's predicated on. So I really think Georgia pulls that one out. As far as that Alabama, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, Georgia's, they're pissed. Like know that they are chomping at the bit to get another chance at Alabama.
Well, Kirby Smart came out after the game and said something about essentially thanking Alabama for beating them because he needed this thing to be refocused, and that's if you get college kids to focus for 3 weeks on a ball game, I feel bad for Michigan.
Yeah.
As far as the Alabama-Cincinnati game goes, forget his last name. They call him Sauce, the corner there at Cincinnati. If he can shut down Jameson Williams, Jameson, I think it sounds right.
Yeah.
If they can shut him down, and he should. I mean, the corner there in Cincinnati, probably going to be a first-round pick for sure, maybe a top 10, top 15 pick in April. If he can run with him well enough that he does get loose the whole game, man, Bama's going to be in trouble trying to run that football consistently. Without Mechie, it could get dicey for Bama. I still think Bama wins because it's Nick Saban. Nick Saban will figure it out.
Yeah.
But it could get dicey.
Two questions stemming from the end of this weekend and heading into the playoff, but they both surround the Georgia and Alabama teams. If you're Kirby Smart, does any thought of going to JT Daniels after that performance by Stetson Bennett enter your mind?
I'll be honest. I had the thought during the game was why not throw JT Daniels in at this point? See what he can do. And I understand, there may be something about not hurting the psyche of Stetson Bennett, something like that. I don't know. What I know is Stetson wasn't getting the job done. Something needed to happen. You got JT Daniels.
How fitting would it be in the national championship game, halftime?
Yep.
JT Daniels comes in and wins the game, going back to 2018. Tua. Hit Devontae Smith, the eventual Heisman winner a couple of years later. Second question I had for you is pertaining to the Heisman. Did Bryce Young seal it on Saturday?
I think so. I mean, I haven't seen anybody else worth giving it to.
Yeah.
I think so. I think you can.
We referenced this last week, and you mentioned Jason White. Like nobody remembers who Jason White won. He won the Heisman. Like, are you still thinking? I mean, even if let's say Bryce Young wins it, Alabama goes on to win the national championship. I mean, is it still just kind of one of those years where it's just like,
I think it's possible, but Bryce Young's definitely got one more year before he can go pro.
Yeah.
And so he'll come back next year. I think it's going to matter what he does next year. I mean, if let's say he wins it, he's got a shot at pulling an Archie Griffin,
sure,
and winning it back to back, being the second person to ever win two of them, and the second one to win back to back. So, I think he's going to need to do something like that. Other than that, I think it's kind of forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the bowl schedule really quickly. So obviously, we're looking forward to the Final Four and the national championship game. We are obviously looking forward to the Liberty Bowl for the Bulldogs and the Citrus Bowl for the Kentucky Wildcats. But outside of the college football playoff games and our own team, our favorite teams games, is there a bowl game out there that you look at and you're like, that could be interesting? I wouldn't mind taking a look at that and watching that game because it should be fun.
I think that Utah-Ohio State Rose Bowl could be a lot of fun, to be really honest. You look at what Utah did to Oregon. And you look at that offensive firepower there and the offensive firepower in Ohio State. I think that could be a fun little game, and I don't know. Do you have a better one?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a better one. I am intrigued by the Baylor Ole Miss matchup in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
I think Baylor's defense against Ole Miss's offense, it looks like it'll probably be the Matt Corral swan song. Ole Miss just signed Kiffin to an extension, so he's locked in there for a while. A lot of people are hinting at Spencer Rattler maybe going to Ole Miss after this season. So is it an audition for Ole Miss from their offensive standpoint for his services? I think that could be a really interesting game. I think the Rose Bowl game, like you mentioned, that's a really good game as well. But yeah, that's definitely one that stood out to me. But there's quite a few good looking games across. You got Oregon and Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah,
it looks like Brent Venables is going to be the new coach at Oklahoma. Looks like Oregon's losing their coach. So there's all kinds of stuff going on that could make those games fun.
Yeah, and I mean, you got other ones. That Oklahoma State Notre Dame Fiesta Bowl, right? Yep. Like you got 2 top 10 teams there.
We didn't even talk about the Big 12 championship game where Oklahoma State had first they had 7 tries within like the 5-yard line to win that game and never could get
came up, about as I know nobody can see this, about as wide as my computer screen here, is about as short as they were.
Yeah.
About half a yard maybe. It was insane. But yeah, I mean, we got some good games. I think that Outback Bowl could be fun. Arkansas, Penn State.
Yep.
We got a lot of really fun games, I think, coming up for bowl season, and it'll be fun to just kind of sit back and watch them.
Well, it's also been fun to sit back and watch the coaching carousel, Kyle. I mean, it's been pretty wild. We talked a little bit about last week, but I mean, you look at just all the coaches. I mean, Brian Kelly going to LSU, Lincoln Riley going to USC. Now it looks like Brent Venables is going to Oklahoma. You've got what it sounds like Mario Cristobal from Oregon is heading to Miami, even though they haven't formally let go of Manny Diaz yet. I mean, there's just some wild coaching stuff. Notre Dame ends up promoting their defensive coordinator. And I will tell all of you out there, if you haven't had a chance to see the video of when they announced him as the head coach, one of their other assistants was addressing the football team in the locker room. It almost looked like it was a scene out of Rudy, where he's standing up and doing the Newt Rodney address. But he's talking to the team and talking about how impressed he was with their focus during the week and all this and all that. And he says, and let me introduce you to your new next football coach. And you can see the players are like, wait, what? And then walks that defensive coordinator. Yep. And the place just erupts and goes nuts. It says a lot about that coach and the connection he's been able to make with that team.
Yeah, that was the right call to make. It may not turn into wins. It may not turn into a national championship. It may not turn into anything. But as far as looking at it right now, that's the right call to make. It keeps the OC there, who was a former quarterback, Tommy Rees. Keeps him there. The DC becomes the head coach, and he goes out and finds somebody that essentially can do what he did. I feel like it's a great hire. I do find it interesting the way Miami's doing this thing. They're getting ready to hire the Clemson AD. I forget his name. I apologize. And Mario Cristobal, and they haven't let Manny Diaz go. That just leaves a sour taste in my mouth.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's the way to do it, but who am I? I'm not the you, right?
Right.
So to me, that's fun. Maybe not fun's the right word, but that's an interesting situation to watch. Who ends up being Oregon's head coach would be the next thing to watch. So yeah, this coaching carousel, and look, we got AD jobs open too. Florida State's looking at Louisville's AD right now.
Yep.
It's interesting. We got transfer portal stuff we can talk about. Then maybe next week or something.
Now that I feel like there needs to be a transfer portal for coaches. Yes. Which I guess I say that's been happening all along, I guess.
Yes, they can leave whenever they feel like it.
Yeah, it's definitely wild. Well, let's finish up the show here. We've only got a few minutes. The picks. I mean, for as far as the picks go, we're just picking the Final Four in the national championship. So,
right.
college football playoff. It'll be on Friday, December 31st, and New Year's Eve. The first game is the Cotton Bowl. We've got Cincinnati versus Alabama in Jerry World there in Arlington, Texas. I'll go first, Kyle. I would love to pick Cincinnati here. I think it would be so much fun to see them win this game. But, I picked against Alabama last week, and it didn't work out so well for me. Like you said, you just can't go against Saban in these types of situations. So I'm not going to. I'm going Alabama.
Yep, I'm going Alabama too. That's the easier one for me to actually pick between the two.
All right, so the next game, it'll kick off after that game. So we got the Capital One Orange Bowl game down there in Miami. Number 3, Georgia, who was number 1 for a better part of the season, against Michigan, who was unranked to start the season, and they find themselves the number 2 team in the country, first team to go from unranked to the college football playoff. I'll go first. Man, again, I would love to see Michigan win this game. I think it'd be really interested to see Harbaugh versus Saban have a different team. I don't want to really see a rematch, but at the end of the day, I think it's probably going to be Georgia and playing Alabama, so I'll take the Dogs.
Yeah, it's an all SEC final. This one's going to be closer than I think the Alabama-Cincy game. But this one's going to be close, and I think Georgia pulls it out.
So that leads us up to Monday, January the 10th, Lucas Oil Stadium, College Football National Championship game in Indianapolis. I will let you pick first, Kyle. You were saying Georgia and Alabama. They just played yesterday as we are recording this podcast. Alabama won by a couple of touchdowns. Does the Tide repeat as national champions, knock off Georgia again this year? Saban moves another win over an assistant coach and then adds another national championship to his repertoire, or does Georgia finally break through?
No, Georgia doesn't break through. This is Bama. What I saw on the field was just a better team and too much speed out wide for the Georgia DBs to keep up with. And if you listen to them talk, they during the game, they said that the one thing that Kirby Smart was worried about was the back end of his defense, and nobody had threatened them all year. They got up to one team that could threaten them, and there it is.
Yeah. Well, just for the sake of us not agreeing on every game, and I do think that there will be a little bit of a kind of revenge factor, and I think Georgia will play with a chip on their shoulder if they're able to get there and they see Alabama, and they want that to happen. Like, they want Alabama to win, and they want to face them again. So I'm just going to play off of that, and not that I think Kirby can hold Saban's jockstrap in terms of coaching, but I think Georgia will end up knocking them off. I mean, we saw this 3 or 4 years ago. Clemson in the rematch finally got Alabama, and I think it'll happen again this year. I will take Georgia as the national champion, knocking off the Crimson Tide.
We'll see.
We will. And we will see you next week on Dad's Watching Sports. Y'all take care. Thanks again to Bryan Hoch for joining us. Go check out the work that he does with the Yankees and following all that's going on in the baseball lockout. Kyle, have a good week, sir. We'll see you next week, and we'll see all the dads next week on Dad's Watching Sports.